All right. Okay, I think we're on now. All right. So thank you, Miss Cook, for joining me this morning. For this is the first of what I'm hoping to be a number of conversations. I did a conversation for our church service a few weeks back called the Heart Work, or Heart Work is hard work, is what I called it, but not impossible. And as I was reflecting and so forth, I said, that would be a good conversation to have on a regular basis. So I've decided to start a conversation called the Heart Work with Marty
I
Martin.
like that. I like that
Um,
concept.
and
We
and
need
so
that. We need that so badly.
yes, and so the whole premise of the Heart Work will be celebrating our racial diversity while building and fostering racial harmony, one conversation at a time. And so I know that the heart work is hard work, but it's not impossible. So, and I thought of you as one of the people I'd like to talk to first because you were one of my favorite teachers, and
Um,
and not only one of my favorite teachers, but you just happen to be a white woman who married an African American man and raised
right,
biracial children and
right,
served in a very diverse community.
right,
And I know that you have the right heart. And so
right,
I thought this would be the right
right,
person to have this
right.
conversation with, to launch this series of conversations that I'm hoping to launch in the moving forward. So it's the heart work is hard work. So those of you that are joining us either by Facebook or YouTube, thank you so much for peeking in or stopping in or sneaking into our conversation today about the heart work. As all of this recent um, unrest
Turmoil.
that we've
Right.
had around our nation and around the world concerning racial relationships and racial harmony and, or excuse me, racial injustice, um, I thought, man, the things that we could change policies, we could change laws all day long, but you can't legislate people's hearts.
Right.
And it's evident that this is work that has to come from within. And so working on the hearts of people um, is so important. And so for hearts to really change, I think conversation is a part of bringing about that change. Being a person of faith, I believe God works on our hearts, but there's also an ancient scripture that says that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. And so faith comes by hearing. So the more we hear about racial harmony, racial equality, racial peace, I think if we can project that message more often, it'll start to touch more hearts, and we can see some hearts change, not just policies change, but hearts change and people change and
Right.
relationships change. So that's what the heart work is all about. Cultivating, motivating, and fostering racial harmony, one conversation at a time. So thank you so much, Ms. Cook, for joining me for
Right.
this conversation. Mrs. Cook is my elementary school teacher. Now, Ms. Cook, you and I actually met. I didn't have the privilege of having her as my direct teacher until I was in 6th grade, but we met in 3rd grade. I met you when I was a 3rd grader at Knox Elementary School in Southeast San Diego. And you were so kind to me, even though I wasn't your student. You were just so kind to me. And man, I felt like you were my teacher. And so when I did get to have you as a teacher, I was so excited and so happy to have you as a teacher. And so I'm glad that we've kept in touch all these years, and you've still been a motivation and an encouragement to me down through the years, even as I've moved on to junior high and high school and college and graduate school and into the teaching profession myself. I'm honored that I get to celebrate this time in conversation with you on the heart work. So thank you for joining us today. My first question is, because we had the privilege, I shared with Mrs. Cook before we came on the air that I chose her because Miss Cook happened to be, now Miss Cook, is your nationality Irish?
Irish and German.
Okay, see, and I said, I used to tell people I had the best redhead Irish teacher
White.
in the world. It was beautifully red. A matter of fact, let me see. Let me see so I can prove to people that
Oh my
she
gosh,
was
Marty.
a redhead, beautiful teacher. Let's see if I can share that picture. There she is. All
Oh
right.
my goodness.
Yes, that's my teacher. Mrs. Cook. Yes. Beautiful redhead Irish teacher, Irish German now I know, that I loved and adored. And I never thought of you as my white Irish teacher. You were just my teacher, Mrs. Cook, who I loved
Oh,
and adored. And it wasn't until, now, I mean, I'm not colorblind. Yeah, I knew
right,
you were white, but that wasn't the first thing on my mind. First thing on
right.
my mind was that she was kind, caring, supportive, loving towards me. And that's what made you such a wonderful teacher and that I could learn from. And I don't know if you remember, but I always bring this up, but you also helped me, let me put that picture back up. You also helped me open my first savings account.
Oh
You-
yeah, I do remember that.
yes,
I don't know why. I don't know why I did that. I mean, I just remember doing it. We must
yeah.
have talked about it. I don't know. Can you get rid
I,
of that picture?
no, I like that picture of you because I'm gonna pull up another one in a second. But let's see, I can hold, let me come back here. But you helped me open my first savings account when I was like in fifth grade, I think. Took me to Great Western Bank, which no longer exists. I think Wells Fargo bought them out.
That shows how long ago.
Yeah, and just took an interest in me. I also remember you taking us in your Volkswagen van, taking a group of us kids, all us little African American boys, going to well, it wasn't Rite Aid, it was called Thrifties, and getting us an ice cream. I still remember that.
Really? I don't remember that.
I still remember it. And so they're just those little things that, adults may not think much of it, but it makes such an impact on kids. Just those
Yeah,
simple things. And it just made
yeah,
an impression that you cared about us. And that's what
yeah.
made learning from you so easy. And so I was also sharing with Ms. Cook that I chose her for this conversation because not only is she an Irish German, beautiful woman, but she also married an African American man who served as a police officer in our community for many, many, many years. And so I thought this would be the most fitting person to start this conversation with. And let me share a picture of the early Cooks. Let's see, there they are.
Oh yeah,
And so
that's it.
that's them.
Oh
And
my goodness.
so it's just great having you in my life. And I know that like I said, your heart's in the right place and concerning racial relationships and racial harmony and so forth. And so I thought it would be great for you to start this conversation. So my first question for you is, how did you tell us about how you and your husband met?
Well, it has to go back a long ways. How much time do you have?
Got plenty of time. Take your time.
Okay. All right. Well, when I was 18, I was at a senior prom. I grew up in a white community, lily white, very small, maybe 20,000 people in Washington. And there were no Black people in my town. But at my senior prom, I got some kind of direction from God that I was supposed to become a missionary. And so I didn't really know how. I decided I would become a nun and go on a missionary, be as a nun, because I was a Catholic. So I went to California at age 18 and I entered the convent. And when I got to Los Angeles, that's when I became aware of racism, because I was in Sierra Madre, another lily white community at that time. And then I saw what was going on in Watts and Compton and the Black communities. And I was astounded. It just hit me so hard of what the history was that I knew, but I hadn't really imbibed that concept. So at the young age of 18, I thought, I know what it is. White men don't want their daughters to marry Black men. So I will get all of these white nuns out and get them to marry Black men, and I will start a new trend, and we will help the races. Well, the only problem was nobody wanted to do that. But anyway, then I decided Plus, they kept telling me, we need you to teach here in Los Angeles, so you can't be a missionary yet. So for 14 years, I taught in Los Angeles as a nun waiting to be a missionary.
Wow.
And I did everything I could, you know, for the Black community. At that time, Cesar Chavez was, you know, prominent, and I went to the meetings with the Viva La Raza community. I went to the meetings with Martin Luther King's community.
Wow.
And then I kept that up. I worked at the Channel of Love in Watts. I taught in Watts. I was in Watts during the Watts riot.
Wow.
I read Rivers of Blood and Years of Darkness, which explains why did they have that riot in Watts. There you see what has happened to the Black people that came to this country. You see what I say? It's a long, involved story.
That's okay. I'm getting to know more about you in this conversation. This is fascinating. I mean, you've met people that I only read about. So I'm loving this. So keep going.
Yeah. So it was 1955 when I went to LA, and this was during the 50s and 60s that I was involved doing this. And of course, helping us out was John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. But by the end of the 60s, by 68, for example, all three of them had been assassinated. That just tore me apart. It's almost like I gave up, you know, it's like we can't win, you know. But President Johnson passed passed John Kennedy's Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Bill of 1968.
Right.
Then there could be interracial marriage, and it could be legal in all the states.
You make a good point there. You make a good point there, because again, during that time of your vision of people interracially marrying, it was against the law.
Right.
Now, was it against the law here in California too?
It was earlier. It had been changed in California,
Okay.
but in many states it was, and it was looked down upon. You know,
Wow.
even in Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles. You didn't see interracial couples. I was not trying to marry a Black man at that time. I was just trying to do what I could for interracial relationships. And I felt like I was a good teacher, and if I could teach at Black schools, that would be a little bit of help. You know how one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in 1968, when that bill was passed, there was, CBS and the Ford Foundation sponsored different things for people to get involved in to help with open housing. Okay, now you sure you want to keep hearing this?
Yes.
All right. I went to Ohio, and I got involved in that particular activity for 3 months, 8 hours a day, every day. I knocked on the doors of white people. I went to white pastors. I went to white councilmen. I went to the white mayor. I was supposed to hit everybody in that suburb and tell them about the new law, open housing. Okay, now this is a white community, but now Black people may move in here. That's the law. Well, there were other people that were doing this. We did it alone, but there were a group of people that were, you know, that went there to participate from all different states. And we were hosed down, we were screamed at, we were cursed at, we had Bibles thrown at us.
Wow.
We were not welcome, you know.
My goodness.
We were not welcome. And by the end of 3 months, well, I'm white. I've always been white, but I hated being white. I hated being white.
Wow.
Because I had the feel of what a Black person undergoes, you know. And I thought, how can I be part of a race that does that? I couldn't accept it. Anyway, I went back to Los Angeles, and I had already known Ray Cook, the one you said, the policeman, I had for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
He was also a musician.
Oh.
And at my school, I was in charge of the music. And so he would bring his band over and play and talk to the kids and show them the Congo drums and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And I remember when I came back that summer, he said to me, now you know how a Black person feels.
Wow.
And I knew, Anyway.
Well, you bring up a good point, Ms. Cook, that, and this is what people need to hear. That's why this conversation is important, is that the fight for equality, even back then, was not just fought by African Americans, but there were white people just like you who believed in this and were fighting for this. Some gave their lives for this.
Right.
So it wasn't just African Americans fighting for this equality. There were people of other races, and that's that piece of that heart work that was so important. And understanding your frustration with your own race, and to have that kind of mindset that caused you to think, man, what kind of race am I a part of? I'll be curious to know when that shifted, because there's value in you as an Irish German woman as well. And everybody just didn't share those values. And then you brought up, you go back to California, you hook up with Ray Cook again.
Well,
and you talk about music, because just a caveat, just a side, you taught me how to read music.
I did?
Yes, you taught me F-Face, F-A-C-E, every good boy does. You taught me how to read music in 6th grade. That's when I learned how to read piano notes on the treble clef, was because of you. Yes, that was my first introduction to, because you had a piano in the class and I wanted to learn how to play piano. And so you sat down and you showed me how to read the notes on the treble clef and showed me the notes on the keyboard. I play around. My son and daughter take lessons, so they play, but I play around. So I can find chords and I can play a few songs. But my introduction to playing piano came from you. So thank you again. See, all these little things, you had such an impact on my life, so I'm glad you're here. And now I know that one of my favorite teachers was a part of the civil rights movement. How cool is that? So, okay, so you get back to LA, you and Ray talk, and he says, now you can see how Black people, what people.
But I was still a nun.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, I had always known that I was supposed to have kids. And I didn't want to leave the nunhood because I loved being a nun. We worked in the prisons, down in LA, with the homeless, did a lot of things, and I loved doing that. But by now I was 30 at least, and God told me, I hate to say this, Marty, but as a pastor, you would understand, I had the strongest message from God that I was supposed to have children. So I looked at my life as a nun and I thought, how am I going to do that? Anyway, so then I left the convent. You had to write 3 letters to the Pope to leave the convent. I left the convent with conviction that somehow I was supposed to have children. And I wasn't concentrating on Black men or anything. I was just, that was part of my issue. So, but yes, I did know Ray Cook. And we started dating, and eventually then we got married. And I got pregnant in my 30s on my wedding night, and I had a baby every year for 5 years. So I know that God meant that. I know that God meant it, because after the 3rd one, we were trying not to get pregnant, but bam,
5, number of grace.
I lost the 4th baby. So the 4 children that are the ones that are living. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So anyway, so then of course, we moved to San Diego because we didn't want to raise kids in Los Angeles. I asked to teach at Knox because Knox was a Black school, and I loved Black children, and I wanted them to have a good teacher, and I felt like I was a good teacher only because—
You're a great teacher.
Well, I'm just saying, that's why I wanted to be at Knox. So then it just goes on, if you're a white person and you have a Black family, in 51 years I've been living in a Black family, you get treated different ways, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You really find out who your friends are, because they can be one way to you, and then meet your family and they can be another way.
Right, right.
But
And
I
that's what
continue to do.
I was gonna ask, that was gonna be my next question
Oh,
for you,
okay.
was what was the racial climate like at that time after you and Ray became husband and wife and started raising your family? What was it like for you in terms of relationships and how people
Well,
interacted
the
with you?
first thing was I went to look for an apartment for both of us to move into, and I believe it was Inglewood, or no, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what suburb, but it was in LA. And the manager said, "Oh, you're a teacher? Oh, yes, of course, we have such and such a vacancy," and showed me a nice, you know, apartment. I said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to put any money down until I bring my fiance, because we are going to be married and then move in." He said, okay, I'll be back at 5:00. So he said, okay. At 5:00, I walked in, and it was upstairs, and I came in the door and he was welcoming me. And then Ray came up the step and in the door, and the guy fell back in his chair. You know, he just about fainted.
Wow.
He said, he said, you know, I hate to tell you this, but he thought fast. He said, my assistant manager already rented that apartment, and I didn't tell him that you were planning to come back for it. So it's no longer vacant.
Wow.
So we had a lot of that kind of thing, a lot of it, you know. I will tell you one more thing. The worst thing that I felt in my life at that time was, we went to the Museum of Science and Industry, and I was pregnant with my first daughter. And we had actually met in this Museum of Science and Industry because I had my 8th grade class with me, and I was there all day, and he was working there as a state policeman that day. And that's when I first met him. Anyway, we went there, and we were just standing looking at some particular item, and there was a couple next to us in their 80s, like the age I am now, or older.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going, you know, just making all kind of noise and looking at us and saying, you know, this is horrible. You know, they were going on and on. Neither one of us said anything. We just stood there looking at, talking about the display. But the reason that was a worse one to me was because I thought people can get all the way into their 80s and still be prejudiced. Well, you must see that as a pastor, you know.
Well, again, that's why the heart work is hard work, but it's not impossible, as you're a testament to that. But yeah, it's hard work, and if folk aren't willing to change their hearts, like I said, we can change policies and laws all day long, but if people's hearts aren't in the right place, just like that landlord who told you all of a sudden, as soon as your fiance walked in and he saw that he was African American, his heart, whoop! I'm sorry, my assistant already rented that place out. There's no vacancies here. I mean, that's that quick, even though the law had changed. And people had a right to live wherever they so choose. People's hearts had to change for things to change in the natural. And so that's why it's so key. And so, yeah, you can, if folk aren't, and a heart change is a choice. And people have to understand that too. And so if one chooses not to change their hearts towards others, it's their choice. And so you all ran into an elderly couple that had chosen not to change their minds and their hearts towards other human beings because of the color of their skin or their racial background or their cultural background. But then you got lots and lots of people who have changed their hearts and have continue to move for equality for everyone. And talking about hearts and what moved you, we got a little bit of your story and what moved your heart, but what moved you and your husband's hearts to love despite the racial divides of that time?
I think we were just two people, you know. I don't think we realized that there weren't other people like us, black and white, but I don't know. I felt like love could overcome anything. And, you know, friends said to me, this is so horrible, because your children will suffer so badly if you have children.
Wow.
And I thought about that, but I thought, we're all God's people. We're all God's human race. I've never been able to get that in my head, how people can really think that way. And they do think that way, They think, I mean, so I don't think that was a big issue to us. It was to everybody around us, but.
So you guys had to become your greatest allies and greatest supports.
Yeah.
And allow love to conquer whatever the naysayers and the haters were saying. The two of you had to purpose in your hearts to love each other, to love your children, and to keep pressing forward. Not realizing that the impact that you guys were going to have on future generations. I mean, as I share my stories with you of how you've impacted my life, you're still surprised, but I'm just one of many students that you have blessed because of your heart towards us, caring enough about us to come and teach in what they call hard to staff schools,
right,
or underperforming schools, and choosing to come and teach in our community and make sure that we had a quality education, and that we got to see somebody that didn't look like us but loved us.
Right.
And so
I did love you guys.
Yeah, you sure
my
did.
family.
Yes. And yeah, you were like another mom. It's just amazing. I think sometimes my mom, because you and my mom are around the same age. I think you're a year older than my mom, and she's still working and kicking and doing well too. And I would talk about you often. And I think sometimes she got a little jealous, like, who's this Mrs. Cook you always talking about? She's not your mama, I'm your mom. So yes, you were like a mom. You loved us like your extended children. And even when you introduced us to your children, I mean, it was, and I think it was just, we had a good relationship. So yeah, you and your husband had to become your greatest allies. And you mentioned children because I didn't send you the script of my questions ahead of time. So you just are flowing with my train of thought, because my next question was, with the increase in the number of multiracial children in our country and around the world, do you have any advice to parents on how to help their multiracial children grow up with a sense of confidence and self-worth, that they can value that, yeah, I'm Black and I'm white, or I'm Filipino and Black, or whatever the case may be, that they can value their racial and cultural heritage without having to feel like they have to choose? I know society makes us choose, because if you know that rule, if you have one drop of Black blood, you're Black in our society. But your children should be able to celebrate their Irish heritage, their German heritage, their African heritage, without feeling any guilt or feeling like they're slighting one part of their family or the other. So what advice would you give parents that have multiracial or biracial children to help their children feel confident and secure in who they are as people?
I mean, I don't look at children as multiracial. I have 12 grandchildren now. So, we have Guamanian, we have Spanish, we have Puerto Rican, we have a lot of mixtures. So it's really multiracial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think love, just love. And like you say, the heart. I mean, a child can feel if you love them in every circumstance, no matter what. And if you teach them that those people, that are cruel, pray for them, pray for them. They don't understand. Oh, where'd you get that picture?
Yeah, from your Facebook page.
Oh, yeah. That was about 2012, I think, maybe. Yeah. And those are some of my grandkids, and you can see the mixture.
Mm-hmm.
You can just see, how they're mixed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they look happy. And they look loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you're surprising, Marty.
I prepared for this conversation. I had a good teacher. Yeah. So yeah. So love, and that's huge, to love. and to let them assure them that they're loved. Not
Right.
because they're biracial or multiracial, but because they're a person, they're a
Right.
soul, they're a human being, and your life
Right.
matters.
Right.
And so that's why you're loved, and you just happen to be, like I said when we were talking earlier. As I got older, my consciousness and awareness of me as an African American or Black person became more heightened. But I never, when I meet people, my first initial reaction isn't, oh, that's a white man, or that's a white woman, or a Black woman, or it's just, hi, my name is Marty, and what's your name?
Right. Right.
And then as we continue talking, if race happens to come up, great. But if it doesn't, I'm okay, because I think I try to see the person first. And all the cultural, I love diversity and I celebrate diversity. I don't say I'm colorblind at all, but that's not the first initial thing I'm thinking about when I meet someone.
Right.
Unfortunately, in our society, a lot of times when people see me, the first thing they see is, oh, it's a Black man, without getting to know me first. But I always think about it. And I think, again, it goes back to faith comes by hearing. And the way we change the heart is we have to be taught. And I always remember the words of Dr. King's speech. I have a dream speech that we be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And so I took that to heart. And I even remember when I was a junior in high school, I had an Ethiopian friend who had come over from Ethiopia. And remember when there was an influx of people from Ethiopia coming to the United States. And I remember he and I having a conversation, and he asked me, Marty, what kind of woman are you going to marry? And I started describing her as loving. She has to love God. She has to be kind. She has to be caring. She has to, all these attributes of the woman that I would want to marry. He went, yeah, but is she going to be Black or white? And I said, oh, I never gave that any thought. And he said, wow, I like that. And I was, I never thought about, is she gonna be Black or white? I just figured when I find that woman that I'm gonna love, she has to have these character traits. Whether her skin was Black, white, or yellow or red wasn't the first priority on my list. That didn't even cross my mind. And he was so impressed with that I was really trying to see the heart of the person, or the person first, and not their culture or their race or their skin color. So that's huge. That's huge. And I think helping our children value their worth, because like I said, the reason why I stayed in San Diego to go to school instead of going down south or back east is I wanted to be around different cultures and different people.
Right.
And then as I thought about my college experience, I was one of the few people of color on my campus. So even though I tried to stay here so I could be around diverse groups. So that's a big piece too, is trying to get more students of color into college and diversify our college campuses so that we can continue to build racial harmony and equality. So that's huge. So look at you, Ms. Cook, just all in my script today. Well, that's
I'll
good.
tell
So
you, I'm going to add.
Go ahead.
I was going to add one thing to what you said about, a person sees you as a Black man. My son is a gastrointestinal doctor in Portland, Oregon, and he's been doctor of the year. But he said he always has to first let the people realize he's a Black man. We can get past that, then we can treat you. And I imagine that's the same thing,
Oh, yeah. I've had to deal with it as a school administrator. I've had guests come on campus, and I remember Fridays at the school where I was principal at one time, Fridays were casual Fridays, so I would wear our school t-shirt and jeans. It was casual Friday. And a woman came to do a presentation that afternoon. I think she was from some science program. I can't remember the name of it. But she wanted to go to a room for us to open for a presentation, and the custodians were busy. So I said, oh, I'll take her down and I'll let her in. And as we're walking down to the classroom that I was going to take her into, her question for me was, oh, are you the custodian?
Well, of course, you're a Black man.
And I went, no, I'm the school principal. And she went, and you know, she looked a little startled. And now this is always their excuse when when I tell them this, they always go, oh, you look too young to be a principal.
Oh,
And you know, because I'm not confrontational, it didn't hit me until after I let her into the room. And then I was walking back to my office and I said, why she asked me if I was a custodian? Why didn't she just ask, oh, so what's your role here at the school or something? But she assumed right away, because I was a African-American man in casual clothes,
that you
that
could not be
I
an
was,
administrator.
no. I mean, this is a school. Why not ask, oh, are you one of the teachers?
Right, right. I know. Yeah, yeah.
But it was that. And then in another situation, I was a VP at another school and this woman walked in and we had to come through our nurse's office to get into our main office at that time once we secured the campus. And at that time, I had a nurse who was a white man. And he and I were in the nurse's office at the time and we were talking and she walks in and I say good morning to everybody who comes onto our campus. I say good morning. She ignores me. She says hello to the white nurse, the white male nurse, and keeps going in. And I'm listening to her conversation as she's talking to my clerk and secretary about why she's there. She was there to teach a class for our English language learning parents. She was Hispanic herself. And I said, okay, I'm gonna let her get settled. And then I'm gonna go into her class. So I walk into the class and all the parents, they're like, oh, Senor Martin, hey, Miss Martin. And she's like, why are they all excited about him? And then they told her who I was and her eyes just, and then of course it was the staunch answer, oh, you look too young to be a principal. Like, yeah, okay. So yeah, I've gotten that. And even when I went back to the classroom, I went back to the classroom 3 years ago. So I'm back in the classroom. And I've had some parents that have had concerns because I'm teaching in, I think, your old neighborhood. I'm in San Carlos.
Oh, what school?
At Gaylord Elementary.
Oh.
So I've been there the last 3 years. And I've had some parents with some concerns. Now, some of them, because we had budget cuts and things, and so my position changed, and so that's what got me back in the classroom. And so some were saying, "Oh, we're just concerned because you're a former administrator, and we're sure you're not going to stay. You're just going to go back into administration." That was some of their excuse. Another parent said that her daughter came home every day just anxious and worried, and I was like, okay, I don't see any of that in the classroom. So you're welcome to come and observe my class. And her daughter got wind of, these are 4th and 5th graders that I was teaching. And her daughter came into a meeting with the principal and I, and the mom was explaining to her anxiety and stuff. And the daughter's like, that's my own personal issues. That has nothing to do with Mr. Martin's class. To deal with that. That has nothing to do with Mr. Martin's class. No, this is the student speaking up. So,
Yeah.
You know, I just did my job. I just do my job. And I invite the parents in so that they can get past this and see this.
Right.
Parents who were concerned became some of my greatest allies. So I had to just stay the course and stay focused on students. And I taught the students the value of diversity, even though it's not a very diverse campus. There we have a few sprinkles of color here and there, but just making sure that they know the contributions of African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans on our nation's history, celebrating their diversity, honoring their traditions, and respecting one another as people. And so once parents started to see what I was about, my philosophy, my approach to kids, honoring them as people, now I have parents requesting me.
That's good. I imagine. Yeah.
So but it's a journey every year. It's a journey. But as my reputation is preceding me now, people are becoming more comfortable. But subconsciously, I don't think they're totally aware of their anxiety initially. Some of them are very aware. But I think there are some that subconsciously, it's that, I forgot the term that they use now, unconscious, yes, unconscious bias.
Oh,
Yes, unconscious bias, when they first initially see me. But once they get to know me, and that's where the heart work starts, once you start
right.
looking past the exterior and really start looking at the heart of people, I think we can change some things and we can bring some true harmony and equality to our country and even in our small spheres of influence. And so that's really important. But yeah, I've gotten that too, just like your son. But hopefully we'll see more of us. And you know, and I was very bent on not leaving Southeast San Diego. I got appointed there. And so when they gave me the list of schools that were available, and so that's where I ended up, which was good because my son matriculated through the Patrick Henry cluster.
Right.
And so, but you know, let me take it back. Actually, when I got reassigned from my principalship to go and be a VP up in Mira Mesa, I had fought for a long time not to leave Southeast San Diego. And then they just appointed me up north. And I said, I was never going north of 8, but at that time, I was like, just do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to north of 8, I get to Mira Mesa, and I realized that they need to see people like me in Mira Mesa too. They need to
Right.
see people like
Every
me in
place.
San Carlos.
Every
They need to
place.
see
Yeah.
African-American men, positive role models in every aspect, in every position of life. And so when I got up there, actually, I think it was the first week of school, an African-American mom walked up to me and said, "Thank you for being here."
Hmm.
That's when I
See.
realized, oh, I need to be here too. I had a former boss who used to tell me, "Hey, Milton, you might want to try some schools north of 8. You don't have to stay there. You can always come back to Southeast." I was like, "Nope, I'm staying in my community. This is where I belong." I think she wanted me to see another perspective and then bring the good that works there and bring it back to
Well,
Southeast.
that's the real way you're going to spread the heart,
Right,
because if they see your heart, that's
right.
the whole point.
Yeah,
The
and
more
so
people that see that.
and it was I was pleasantly surprised at the impact I could have outside of my community as well. I still serve in Southeast as a pastor, but now I'm serving as an educator in other parts of the county. And so it's pretty exciting. But that's when I realized that, oh, I'm needed, not just in Southeast, but everywhere. They need to see our
That's
faces.
right. That's right.
Even today, when I share with you that I was in a mock defense with some colleagues for my PhD, all 4 of the doctors that were on my Zoom conference today were all African American, 3 African American men and 1 African American female. And it didn't dawn on me until yesterday when I was talking to my son, and with all that's going on right now, I was like, they're all African American. And when I asked them to support me, it wasn't because they were Black. It was just the people that I worked with. And I was like, hey, are you available? And then it just hit me that, hey, these are positive role models that are doing great things. One's a researcher at San Diego State, one's a vice president at Southwest College, one's an executive in South Sweetwater High School District, one's an executive in Oceans. These are great people doing great things that happen to be of African American descent.
Right.
But it didn't.
You need to interview some of those people too.
Yeah. And, and I didn't think about that, but yeah, in the conversations, we have to have those conversations too. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the day that we can look past the exterior, not saying ignore it, because like I said, I love when I get to boast about you, because you're a white woman who loves me. I love it. And so we can't be colorblind, but we need to make sure that we treat people as people and not based on the color of their skin. But then celebrate our diversity, our music, our culture, our language. It makes for a wonderful world. One of the mothers in my church I grew up in, she would identify, because the church I grew up in early on, we were pretty diverse, predominantly Black, but we had Jewish and white and Hispanic folk in our church. And she would call the church God's bouquet. She never
Oh,
called it a melting pot. She called it a bouquet because there were all
that's
these
beautiful.
different flowers in that
That's
bouquet. You
beautiful.
know,
That's beautiful.
I like giving my wife roses, but you know, there's something about a bouquet where you got different colors and different
Yeah,
kinds. It makes it such a beautiful thing. And so that's
beautiful.
how I like to see the world. Our world is a beautiful bouquet of people. God loves diversity. And if he didn't, we'd all look the same, talk the same, act the same. But he loves diversity. And so we should celebrate that, embrace it, and just enjoy it. And so I'm
Mm.
thankful that I have you in my life. And I thank you for this time that you've given me today. And do you have any final words or thoughts before we close our conversation?
Well, I'm just very proud of you. I've been so proud of you, you know, of your journey, of what you've become, and how many people you're helping. I just think to me, it does my heart so good to know
Oh,
that I knew you when you were in a sixth grade, you know, when you were a little boy. I then, because you were outstanding even then, you know.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I didn't know what you'd become, but now look, you know, look at yourself. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, because
I
I had,
told you I want you to talk at my funeral. I
oh,
feel comfortable in your heart, you
oh,
know.
thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we
I'm
got
not
to have
saying I'm
we
dying
have to
right
have
away.
we need to have a living celebration for you so
Yeah.
that you can, because I want you to get your flowers while you can smell them and see them and hear them. But I'm honored that you think
Yeah.
that much of me to celebrate your life. I'm grateful for the gift that God gave us in you, Mrs. Cook. And I'm sure I speak for many of your students down through the years who appreciate you and appreciate the love that you showed us. Not just the math that you taught us, but the love that you showed us. It made
Yeah.
learning math a lot easier because we knew you cared.
Yeah.
As they say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you cared,
Right.
and you still care. And so I'm grateful that you're in my life. And thank you so much for this time today.
Oh,
So
thank you.
again, and to those that are watching again, this is The Heart Work with Marty Martin and with my special guest, Mrs. Janet Cook, my former elementary school teacher. She'll always be my teacher, but she was my teacher in elementary school and always will be my teacher. And I hope that you'll join us again on another episode. We're hoping to have more episodes of this conversation, The Heart Work, celebrating our racial diversity while building and fostering racial harmony, one conversation at a time. We know that the heart work is hard work, but it's not impossible. So we're going to keep this conversation going. Well, you all take care, and thank you for joining in on today.